Whai kororia, honore hareruia ki a iho ngā mano tua uri uri whai o ki tonu te rangi me te whenua I te nui o tōna kororia. Matua, tama wairua tapu me ngā ana hera pono me te maanga, he tautoko mai ai nei ake nei ai. Nau mai hoki mai, ki tēnei te renga tuarua o Under the Whāriki. I'm Tahu Hollis.
Tēnā rā koutou katoa, he koanga ngākau te piri mai ki tēnei tā tātou kaupapa, ko te Atākura Charland, pewhairangi taku ingoa. And we have a manuhiri here with us. Tēnā rā koe, he mihi ana ki a koe, ki o mana, ki o tapu, piri mai rā ki tēnei tā tātou kaupapa. Ka tukuna ki a koe te wāhi, ki te whakamahuki atu, ko wai koe, nohea hoki koe.
Tēnā tātou, ko Hetekia Te Amo ahau, he uri tēnei no te waka o te aroa, I whakapapa mai au ki ngā wai o tōku māma, I te taha o tōku māma ko rangiuri te maunga, ko kaituna te awa, ko tapu ika te iwi, ko Ngāti moko te hapū, ko moko tangata ko tahi te whare tūpuna, ko rauwhārangi te wharekai, ko tia te tangata, ko tama te kapua te kai hautu, ko te aroa te waka.
Tēnā rā koe.
Te takapū o tapu ika. Wow, he tauranga moana hoki ai. So, pai te ono, pai te ono. Pau, he kōrero tēnei mō tēnei mea, te drugs. Kōrero mai mō whiako, mō tō haerenga. Where did that behaviour start in your life?
So, I grew up in Te Puke, and I grew up in Kohanga reo. I went into kura kaupapa Māori. My first kura was te kura kaupapa Māori o te matai. And at about the age of 7, my father passed away. And that was really that moment in time where I really lost connection to Te Ao Māori. I lost connection to who I was as a person. I lost a mentor. I lost a father figure. I lost an important figure in my life to be able to show me, well, I suppose, guide me on this journey they call life. And so at about the age of 9, we were living in Whakatane at the time, and my mama, being a young mama, who just recently lost her partner at the time, I suppose she didn't, or she only parented the way that she knew how to parent, you know, and she only had tools in her belt that she was able to parent at that time. And at that moment in time, there's 4 of us, and I'm the eldest of the male line, and so my sister went to one of my uncle's whare, and he was a good man. He was a law-abiding citizen, mahi, went to church and all those sort of things. And then I ended up with my uncle, who was an alcoholic and very violent. And at that time, I suppose that's where the life of darkness, the life of despair, the life of just hating the world and hating men and hating drugs and alcohol. And yeah, I suppose that's where it really started for me, you know, like I would often go to kura. I went to Arataki kura over in the mountains. Yeah, ATK. ATK. And yeah, I went to kura over there, and quite often I would come home from kura, and my uncle would be heavily under the influence. And at times I would get, some would say, the hiding of my life, you know, by my uncle. I suppose at that time, when I look back at it now, my uncle only knew what he knew, you know, and it was probably, he was probably role modelling what was role modelled to him, you know, and at that time, every time I knew my uncle was drunk, I would always run down to this park and just to get away from it and wait until he was sleeping. And then I said to my mum once, Mum, I don't want to live here anymore. I keep getting hidings for no reason. When she next came down and said, Mum, I'm not staying here anymore, I'm getting in the car. And I got in the car, and I remember getting in the car and getting locked in the car, and I just wouldn't get out of the car. And so my mum ended up taking me back to Whakatane. And in this period of life, I ended up with another whānau who were gang heavy. It was gang heavy, similar to where I was living in Papamoa. And there was domestic violence, there was drug and alcohol use, and there was even sexual abuse in this whare. And when I talk about sexual abuse, it was one of those kaupapa that was never really spoken about. You know, it was kept in the four walls of your whare.
Nā kau muna e, o tērā hanga.
Yeah,
Ki ngā whānau katoa.
yeah, yeah,
Hey,
koina.
ia Māori,
Yeah.
we all know that story.
Yeah, koina. You know, and oh, sorry, going back to when I was first living with my whāngai uncle, that was the space where I first started picking up drugs and alcohol. Well, not drugs, but cigarettes, alcohol from all the house parties, you know. I'd be in the ashtrays, looking at all the ashtrays, taking all the butts out and all of that sort of stuff, and drinking all the half-empty drunken cans. And and I suppose, when I moved over to Whakatāne, the seed had already been planted of addiction, you know. I was already wanting to smoke all the time. I was already wanting to drink all the time. And by this time, I think I was maybe only 10 years old. In Whakatāne, where I used to stay on Cutler Crescent, there was a Te Whare Wānanga o Awanui Arangi just down the road. And in between there was a playground there. So I used to always run down to the playground, and then I would talk to my friends. I was like, hey, should we go and have a look over there and go and find us some smokes? And you know, I didn't really know that was going to be the traction for my life moving forward for the next 10, 20 plus odd years. And then at 13, I went to Trident High School. And at that time, I was, I suppose, in their eyes, I was just another naughty child. I was just another little hua. I was never going to amount to nothing. I was just going to become a criminal. And I proved them right, you know, and I ended up getting expelled at school. 13 years old, I got expelled from school because I told the principal to, pretty much, I swore at the principal, and I never really got an education. So the only way I could get an education was to go and be street smart. And I fell into crime and relationships with women, and like I had this void in me because I lost my father. I had this void in me that I was trying to fill with external things. I was trying to fill it with drugs and alcohol. I tried to fill it with women, tried to fill it with crime, and I knew I was trying to search for something, but I just couldn't figure out what it was. And this led me on my journey into jails, you know, at 18 years old. I was going up on charges simply because I had no money and I knew how to get money, so I would go and rob people under the influence of alcohol. And I would go and steal from them just to make money so that I can go and buy more alcohol and drugs. And at 18 years old, I think the judge had enough of it and he sentenced me to jail. And that was my first experience with going into jail. And as an 18-year-old little boy going into big men's jail, it was scary.
That'll wake you up, eh? That'll wake you
Well,
up.
one would think that it would wake you up. You know?
Yeah,
One would think that it would
one
wake you
would
up, but
It didn't.
nah, it didn't. It's ultimately just dug me deeper and deeper and deeper, you know. And you know, the cycle that I was in, I knew that I always wanted to change. I just didn't know how.
It's hard when the system's telling you this is your value. Where's your examples? Hey, tō tipuranga, you've only seen that, you've only known that. It's interesting that you took the origin back to 7. Like, bro, that's a long time. And where the system's telling you you're valueless, worthless, if your whānau is treating you the same, where do you turn to there?
I suppose when I went through jail and when I was 18 years old, I think that's where I found the love for gangs, you know, because I was accepted for, I was accepted for my shortcomings. I was accepted for my behaviours, you know. I was accepted for the way that I behaved, you know. And whereas if in my whānau it wasn't frowned upon, but it wasn't also anything to be acknowledged, you know, whereas the gangs, they acknowledged it. And they really...
Whakanui you.
Yeah, and they really got into your garden and they really did their mahi, you know, and they really instilled that sort of kaupapa into you. And, you know, so that was my journey in through jails for about, I think from the age of 18 up till about the age 27, 28.
Wow.
27, 28, in and out. I think the longest period I spent out of jail, I think would have been about 3 or 4 months. It's the longest period, you know. Otherwise, I spent my 18th birthday in there. I
So
spent
your
my
legs were
21st.
the outside.
Yeah.
Hey, during those days.
100%, you know. My leg was outside.
Outside,
you know?
yeah.
You know, and I always knew I wanted to change. I just didn't know how to, you know. When I went to jail, I would tell myself, I'm not going to drink alcohol anymore. I'm not going to commit crime anymore. But I actually had no tools in my kite to actually go, this is how you stop doing it. You know, and yeah, so I went on that cycle. I went into jail, got out. The first place I would stop would be the bottle store.
Sure.
Straight away at the next tinny shop.
Sure.
You know, and then home.
Sure.
And then straight away, that very first night I got out of jail, having domestic violence or having something within the whānau, you know, having big arguments within the whānau, swept under the carpet. The very next day would be on the juice again and repeating the same cycle, you know. And then for those 10 years, that's what I was doing, was going to jail, coming out, repeat, going to jail, coming out, repeat.
Everybody I've spoken to who's been through addiction, I'm a fella that's been through addiction, you know, I te tarukino, I te alcohol, hoki. But the thing that I've found with everyone who's gone through that journey, that haerenga, is that there's a turning point. I had addiction, really bad addiction with gambling, like a lot of our whānau do. And I got to the point of lying, stealing from my parents. And I'm a fella that comes from privilege. I don't come from your world. I grew up in 4 walls of aroha and kai. Maha ngā kai, maha te aroha. Nui te aroha. And I took my privilege for granted, and I got lost in me land, in ego land of I want more than what I can get right now. And that's what it comes down to, shortcuts,
100%.
Shortcuts.
100%.
And through that addiction, I was a liar, a cheater, stealer. That's how I was talking to myself. That's who I looked in the mirror and told myself I was. And it got to the point of, you know, I had all this money at the start of the year. I couldn't even fill my truck. And I'm sitting there on the side of the road. I had $1,000 left of all this puti I had at the start of the year, and I chose to gamble it. $1,000 on the last gamble. Chucked it on the horse. Won 10,000. Chucked 10,000 on the next race. Won 20,000. Chucked 20 on the next race. See you later. Lost it all. I was that bad. I looked up after I lost my last dollar, and the next thought was, I'm going to drive this truck off the road. You know, I'm not worth what I've been given. That's where it can be reversed as a fella from privilege. I know what I've been given, and I'm not worth that. I haven't valued it, and I haven't done the best with what I've been given. So the moment there was, I'm going to drive the truck off the road, or I'm going to call my dad. I was lucky to have a dad, because I called him. And my reira flew straight up to me. He was there that night. I'm so glad that I had that turning point and I went to my dad, because I got to admit my shit. I looked at him in the eye, I told him, I've stolen from you. I've done this, I've done that. I have nothing to my name. Can you please help me? And he did. He gave me $50 for my truck. He said, use that to fill it up to come home. That's your job, boo, come home. And I did. Hoki au ki te kāinga, hai kiri. We did my peha, that's why I did this. Yeah. And from that, he rongoa, you know. Yeah. What was that turning point for you, bro? What was your deep, dark moment?
I suppose for me, brother, you know, when I think about the life that I lived, there came a time when I was jobless, I was homeless, I was hopeless. And at the time, I was just jumping in and out of relationships just to have a roof over my head and somewhere to sleep. And there was a moment there where I was in full psychosis.
True.
Yeah. Because my drug of choice was methamphetamine. I was in full psychosis. I think I'd been up well over 7 days, and I was in full psychosis. Full psychosis, thinking that the police had operations out on me, thinking everybody was laughing at me, thinking all the beeping of cars, horns was at me. You know, I was consumed inside myself with this psychosis. And I remember walking from Manurewa, the creek line of Manurewa, all the way back into Manukau. what I was doing was I was creeping and I was hiding in bushes because anytime I heard a chopper, I thought the police were after me. Anytime I heard a car, the police were after me. Anytime I heard, somebody's after me, you know, and it took me days to make it from Manurewa through to Manukau. And I happened to be sitting behind this, right next door to the Pack and Save in Manukau, Cavendish. And I was sitting behind this cardboard rubbish bin. And I had this moment of reprieve where I was just like thinking clearly. And I thought to myself, is this all? Is this all my life has amounted to? And I remember building a little space for me to sleep in behind this rubbish bin. And at that moment in time, I thought to myself, you can just die, mate. You can just curl over and die. Nobody would even care about you. Your mum wouldn't care about you. Your kids wouldn't care about you. Nobody would care about you. Yeah, you're a piece of shit. You're this, you're that, you're this. And I had that in my head, and I was in full psychosis. And there was this point where I walked towards the Titirangi Bridge. And I thought to myself, fuck, I'll just jump on the motorway. Easier. You know, and what actually happened was I was walking over the Titirangi Bridge, and in East Tamaki, the mother of my kids stayed. The mother of my kids at the time was living. So I thought, just continue walking. And I walked to her house. I don't know how long it took me, but I remember just creeping and crawling the whole entire time away. And I said to her, I've had enough. I don't want this life anymore. I want to change, but I don't know how. Can you help me? But at that time, when I reflect back now, I think it was just a form of manipulation. Because one of my skills was manipulation.
You just want the...
And I just wanted a sleep. I just wanted a roof over my head. I wanted a kai on my belly. You know, and at that time, I think it was just manipulation. And I told her I would do everything I can to get clean. I think I got to maybe about 3 or 4 days clean. And bang, happened again.
What does that look like for a partner or whānau member? What's their role in supporting an addict? Because, you know, from what I know of addicts is, you know, they tell you, yeah, I'm coming off. They wrap around you only to be, you know, kicked in the face again with the same old habits. What type of support worked for you?
When I look back at my story, you know, is stop sweeping it under the whāriki.
Kia ora.
You know, there's a raru.
Oh, that's a revelation of I've read recently, faith without works.
Yeah.
It's like feeling sorry for a fella that's homeless, but not doing anything about it.
100%.
Your sorry don't mean nothing, bro.
100%.
It's the action
100%.
that you talked about.
100%. A plan without action is a delusion, you know? And for far too long, we've swept it under the whāriki for far too long. Because we have this stigma. We don't want to, we've got too much pride. You know, we've got too much pride. And I think that was a blessing for me, the mother of my kids. The mother of my partner at the time, she was a nurse, so she was able to reach out to services for me. And but I was quite fortunate in that aspect. I know there's whānau out there that don't have these supports out there. But I suppose, you know, the first thing, there's a lot of services out there for whānau, you know. There's actually a kaupapa they call Al-Anon, and it's for whānau who deal with other whānau who have addictions. So they're the ones that, whānau who don't have addiction, but they got a whānau in active addiction. So they actually get an insight into how the addict brain thinks and does, you know, because like you said before, you know, sorry, it's just a 5-letter word without any action. And I had to learn that, you know, because in my relationships and all of that sort of stuff, and
Sorry,
I was sorry.
You were so sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I won't do it again. And then the very next day, it's because it's role modeled behaviour. That's what I grew up with. So what I did different was this time in 2019 when I got out, was I actually took action. I took action upon myself. You know, all those years ago, what I actually did was I just thought about it. I never really took any action on it. Hey. So this time in 2019, I actually took action on it and I reached out to services. I got into treatment, I got into rehab and all of that sort of stuff. And then rehabs and NA was a great foundation for me to get clean. And Te Ao Māori is the reason why I stay clean. Hey, because it's ngā uri whakaheke that it's the reason why I'm staying on the journey that I'm on at the moment, you know. And an example of that is my babies, you know, like I put my babies into kohanga reo and all of that sort of stuff, and my 10-year-old, actually, my big girl, she only knew me as an addict, you know. She only knew me as an addict, and when she come into my life about 4 years ago, I was changing and I was in that rhythm of changing, and I started getting into Te Ao Māori and all of these sort of things, and what eventuated from that is my daughter actually stood with us at Waitangi ki Manuku.
I just want to touch on that because I think one thing that, you know, comes with addiction is the effect that it has on not just the tangata, but the whānau as well. Can you explain to us what impact did that have on, well, you've touched on it, your tamariki, your whānau, your hapori? What did that look like?
Yeah, so my oldest son, I've got a big boy, he is 17, and I never got to fully build a relationship with him. He was born when I was in jail, you know, so that's how he knows me, as the father that went to jail, you know. And over these years that I've started getting clean, what I've actually started doing is I've actually started planting the seeds with him. What I don't want to do is I don't want to go in there and try and force my new way of life onto him, because what that might actually do for me is it might actually sever the relationships, you know. So, and it's kind of like a garden doesn't get built overnight, you know. Firstly, you've got to
Whakatō te kākano.
you've got to whakatō te kākano,
Yeah.
and then eventually you've got to water the seed and you've got to nourish it and you've got to prune it and you've got to do all the things, you know. And I kind of speak to my behaviours, like the things that I've learnt in life as a marakai, you know. And when I talk about that, what I'm actually talking about is I have these behaviours in my marakai, and what I've got to do is I've got to actually start taking these behaviours out of the mara, because they're not serving my mara. What it's actually doing is it's actually filling it with weeds, and when I talk about weeds, it's actually the weeds that are going on in here. And when I take out of that mara, I've got to replace it with something positive, you know, and that's a new behaviour: honesty, open, loving, caring, compassionate. But when I replant these seeds, when I've taken out all of these old ones, I've got to also nourish it with affirmations, you know. You are good enough. You are loved. You're an awesome dad. You know, I've got to keep doing that to the garden, otherwise it just eventually dies, you know. And what I've gone and done with my big fella is I've just started planting those seeds in his garden, and just pulling out all the old, yep, Dad was a criminal, yep, I'll pull that one out, and I'll put a new seed in there. Dad can be loving and caring. Yep, Dad was an addict, you know, and Dad left me. And when I look back at my life, I look back at my son's life, I kind of related to the life that I lived, just it played out very differently for my son. You know, like I lost my father at 7 years old. My son didn't have me in his life at a young age. And I went through all of the sexual abuse and the physical abuse and the alcohol and addiction. My son went through that. You know? Like it's just a replay of my life. And that's what I mean, like the garden that I have today is I try and replace things in his garden, and that's sometimes I have to approach it differently, because I like to try and approach things really, really quickly and try and find solutions straight away. But I have to remember that other people don't work like that, you know, and that's what my son's one of them, as an example of that.
That's a hard thing to comprehend for non-addicts, is that a tamaiti can't pull you out of the po.
Yeah, 100%.
Hey.
Yeah.
Because as a husband now, papa, I've got a baby coming, I feel like my whole world is all revolved around her. and I can't make another step without making sure she's part of it, or that she's the priority of it, of why I'm doing that step. So that's a concept that is pauri to hear. Hey, they're not even te maiti, because you think about all our papa, all our mama that have been in prison, and we don't think about all the te maiti that have had to go through the exact same thing that their parents are doing. Hey.
You know, for me, like, what actually happened for me, so in 2019 when I got out on my last remand, when I was in remand, there was this man that actually said to me, brother, I know a way, follow me. It's this Māori fella, this Māori guy, his name is Malcolm. And he said to me, brother, I know a way, because he lived a clean life prior to me coming out into this. And what he actually did was he shone his hinatore. Bright enough for me to actually go, oh, what is that? What is it? Hey. And it sparked the curiosity in me to actually go searching and actually getting my feelers out there and stop being fearless, because for many, many years I lived in fear, you know. I was fearful of doing the wrong thing. I was fearful of saying the wrong thing. But to be honest, I wasn't fearful of going to jail.
True.
Hey. Yeah, there was this guy that actually shined his hinatore very, very brightly, and that's, I suppose, sparked that curiosity for me, and it really, I started creeping and crawling closer and closer to that light, you know, and I suppose it just had to be somebody for me, you know, something.
Some light. There's a hinatore out there for everyone.
100%.
Hey. And for you, it was Malcolm. But you have to change it pretty quickly from Malcolm to be able to turn your own torch on, eh?
100%.
Because ka hoki ki te pō. Ngā wā katoa. Hey, ia te pō, pretty much. Literally, ia pō, ka hoki. And for someone that knows that struggle of being lost in te pō, I know now that it's not a bad place.
No.
Hey, it's not a bad place. It's a place te wānanga. Well, mai te pō, ko puta mai te wānanga. Hey, that's literally where we're from. So you have to be able to find comfort there. But ka hoki te kōrero o tāne te wānanga, when you don't know how to find your way out, ask. Help.
100%.
There's whānau that know that pō as well. You're not alone in te pō. E noho tata pū koe ki ngā atua ki o whānau hoki. That's where I talked about you, even the future of your tamaiti, te aro nui. Hey, you couldn't see it.
No.
You had to go back. Hey, which is a cool thing that I've never thought about. If you can't see forward, look back.
100%. You know, and I suppose that's where that titiro whakamuri anga whakamua thing comes into play for me, you know. Like I quite often will reflect back on my past so that I don't actually go back into te pō, you know. I use that as my fuel to keep me going forward so that I don't actually have to go back there, you know. And we have this thing that says the rear vision mirror is small for a reason. And the front windscreen, that's the direction we're heading. We're not heading back that way, you know. And using the rear vision mirror, so how this is how my brain works. My brain sees po, and when I look in the rear vision mirror, I see the po of where my life went really, you know, jails, crime, addictions, and all of that sort of stuff. And what I'm trying to do with my front mirror is I'm trying to realign these po and not to reposition them in the same position that's behind me. I want to try and reposition them, you know, so that my kids can actually go, oh, that's where my dad went. That's where my dad went. That's where my dad went, you know.
You spoke about services. You know, for a lot of our whānau, they're like, stuff the system, stuff your services. You know, it hasn't worked for us. How did you know that, yep, this is the service for me?
The whakaaro that our whānau have is a whakaaro from Mairano, you know. The services that we have in today's world are definitely different to the services that we had 20 years ago. You know, we couldn't trust the system 20 years ago. You know, there's because this kaupapa that I'm speaking about, it's actually quite starting to come out from te pō and into the light, you know. And it's really starting to get some exposure, and it's really starting to gain some traction. So myself, how I ended up getting into a service was I ended up getting into a kaupapa Māori service because I whakapapa Māori. So I went to a service over in Mount Eden that's called Te Haoranga, and they deal with, and they work under the runanga o Ngāti Whātua, and they deal with mental health and all of that sort of stuff. So I was used to services and going in and sharing my story. But there, like I said, there was that person called Malcolm, and he was that one that shined his hina tore for me. And it was there that I actually got to understand that there's actually people who have actually been through similar experiences that I've gone through, and I'm actually not alone. You know? But how I ended up staying on this journey was there's this kaupapa called Narcotics Anonymous. You may have heard of Alcoholics Anonymous on TV, where people go, AA, and they go, kia ora, my name is, and I'm an alcoholic. Similar kaupapa, but for people like myself who struggle with trauma, meth, abandonment, you know, like a lot of those issues. And that was the kaupapa that actually really cemented me onto my huarahi that I'm actually on, because for many, many years in my addiction and through my growing up, I thought that I was the only one that went through what I went through. I thought I was very alone in this world. I thought I was the only one that was physically abused. I thought I was the only one that was sexually abused, and all of these things. And when I first went into one of those hui meetings, I actually heard my story through somebody else.
Sure. Told the exact same thing.
Told the exact same thing, similar to what you just did, you know?
Yeah.
How you shared your little kōrero with me. I can relate to that. You know? And that's what sparked that seed of curiosity for me was I heard my story through somebody else, and you know, even though I've been on this journey for coming up close to 6 years, there's still moments that I have that are really, really dark.
Of course.
Where life gets overwhelming, kids get overwhelming, and I just want to go news just to escape me. You know, and like I said before,
always recovering, eh?
Yeah, this journey that I'm on is a lifetime journey.
It's forever, yeah.
It's forever, because I know that my reality is if I pick up drugs and alcohol again, the only place I'm going is either 6 feet under or back to jail. That's my reality. And I've tested it and I've proved it to myself many times.
Over. Yeah.
Many times
You know
before.
that for a fact.
Yeah, I know that for a fact. Which is the scary part, which is why, like, that program that I was talking about, Narcotics Anonymous, what it actually does is it actually gives me a reprieve to be able to go accept the things that I cannot change. You know, they got this karakia that's in there that goes, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. You know, and that karakia there really, really, really grounds me in my reality, you know, and it actually makes me really, really grateful for the life that I do have, because once upon a time I almost took it.
Sure.
You know, when I look back at my life today, shucks, I live an amazing life today. You know, and I never thought I could be loved. I never thought I could be compassionate. I never thought I could be a role model. I never thought I could be a matua. You know, these are the things that other people see in me, and I couldn't see it in myself. Yeah, it's tough, but like I said before, you know, like the reason I'm doing this journey is because my kids deserve it.
That's it.
My kids don't deserve the life that I lived. You
And
know,
that's how
it's
you
time to
stayed
wake
out of it. Gratitude. That's what she said.
Gratitude.
Walking in gratitude. Beautiful, bro. That's a beautiful, beautiful note to wrap on. And I'm grateful for this wānanga with you today, my bro. I love you. Top man, my bro. Top man. Tēnā koe mo tērā.
Tēnā koe.
Mihi ana.
Te manako, ka noho haumari koutou ki te kāinga, and took something away from today. Love you all too.